Hi, I'm Tamsin. Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own family? Like a shadow they only notice when they need something fixed? Then maybe you'll understand why my wedding day wasn't about love or happiness. It started with my sister's name on the marriage license and my mother hissing behind my borrowed veil. Smile? He can't see the difference? But Lucian Drake wasn't just any blind man. He was the heir to a technology empire, brilliant and perceptive in ways my family never anticipated. And when he discovered who I really was, he didn't just walk away, he systematically dismantled my family's entire social and financial kingdom. Before we dive into my story, I'm curious, what time is it where you're watching from? And have you ever had someone try to erase your identity while everyone around you applauded? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Let me take you back to that cathedral, where I stood trembling in a dress that wasn't mine, about to say vows to a man who thought I was someone else. I've always been the shadow in my family's portrait, the girl who blends into wallpaper while her sister commands the room. My name is Tamsin Reeve, though in the Cavarel household, I might as well have been nameless, Melis or Celeste, as she preferred in public stood at the center of our family's universe. Perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect daughter. I was the afterthought, the spare, the one my mother's eyes skipped over during family photographs. Hold the phone closer to your mouth, Melis instructed, shoving her smartphone into my hands one evening 6 months ago. And remember to laugh at his jokes. He likes that. I stared at the screen, at Lucian Drake's name flashing, waiting for me to answer. I can't keep doing this, Melis. It's wrong. She rolled her eyes, adjusting her designer dress in the mirror. It's just a phone call. Besides, you should be thanking me. This is the closest you'll ever get to someone like Lucian Drake. Lucian Drake, 32 years old, heir to the Drake technology empire, blind since a childhood accident, and somehow still the most eligible bachelor in 3 states. He was also, technically, my sister's fiancé, though she'd spent more time posting about their engagement than actually speaking to him. He'll know it's not you, I whispered, the phone still buzzing in my palm. Melis turned, her perfect features hardening. He's blind. Tamsin, not psychic, just sound happy and keep it short. I have plans tonight. I answered the call, heart hammering against my ribs. Hello, Lucian? My voice came out softer than Melis's cutting tone. Celeste, he greeted, his voice warm through the speaker. I was thinking about that bookstore you mentioned last week, the one with the reading garden. I froze. Melis had never mentioned a bookstore. That was my conversation with him. 3 calls ago. The lines were blurring. Yes, I managed, with the fountain in the center. I'd like to visit it with you sometime. Behind me, Melis made a hurry-up gesture, mouthing, wrap it up, as she grabbed her purse. That would be lovely, I replied, the guilt burning in my chest. After the call ended, Melis snatched the phone back. See easy. Now I need you to answer any text from him tonight. I'll be back late. This has to stop, I said. The wedding is in 3 months. You can't have me pretending to be you forever. She laughed, the sound like crystal breaking. Don't worry, little sister. By the wedding, everything will be perfectly in place. I didn't understand what she meant then. I wish I had. The cathedral dressing room felt like a prison cell. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting the white walls in fractured color. The wedding dress hung on a mannequin in the corner, all lace, silk, and tiny pearls, a beautiful cage meant for someone else. She's gone, my mother hissed, pacing the small space. Her designer heels clicked against the marble floor like a ticking clock. Your sister is gone. What do you mean, gone? I asked, still in my simple blue dress and flats. I'd arrived expecting to be a bridesmaid, not the center of a family crisis. She left a note, said she needed time on her wedding day. My mother's voice rose dangerously before she caught herself, smoothing her expression like pressing wrinkles from silk. The guests are arriving. The Drake family is already seated. The press is outside. My father stood by the window, his third scotch trembling in his hand. We've invested everything in this merger. Everything. The Drake partnership will save our company. I felt sick. So postpone the wedding. Tell everyone she's ill. And be the laughing stock of the city. My mother's eyes flashed. Have our stock plummet even further. Lose the Drake contract completely. She shook her head, then turned to me with a look that made my blood run cold. Lucian can't see, Tamsin, he'll never know the difference. You can't be serious. My father stepped forward. The marriage license has already been processed with special accommodations. The minister is a family friend. The paperwork just needs a signature. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Your sister's signature, technically, but that's just a detail. This is insane, I whispered. It's fraud. It's family, my mother corrected, already waving in the stylist. And you owe us. Who paid for your college, your apartment? Everything you have comes from this family, and now this family needs you. The stylist approached with curling iron in hand, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Don't worry, Miss Cavarel. You're going to look breathtaking. I opened my mouth to correct her, to say that wasn't my name, but my mother's grip on my wrist silenced me. Smile, she commanded, her nails digging into my skin. He can't see the difference. Hours later, I stood before the cathedral doors, laced into my sister's wedding dress, her veil over my face. I could feel the embroidered initials at the hem CC, not mine brushing against my ankles like a ghost's whisper. The organ began to play. The doors swung open, and I walked toward a blind man who thought I was someone else, feeling like I was burying myself with each step. Lucian Drake stood at the altar like a statue carved from midnight tall, still, elegant in his tailored suit. His dark hair was brushed back from his forehead, his unseeing eyes hidden behind sleek black glasses, his head tilted slightly, listening to my approach. I trembled as the minister began the ceremony, my heart pounding so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. When Lucian reached for my hand, his touch was gentle but precise, finding my fingers without hesitation. Why are you trembling? He whispered, his voice too low for anyone else to hear. Are you afraid I'll see you? The question pierced through the fog of unreality surrounding me. I stared at him, unable to respond. Do you, Celeste Cavarel, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I swallowed the lump in my throat. I do, I whispered, so quietly I barely heard myself. The reception passed in a blur of champagne toasts and camera flashes. Through it all, Lucian kept his hand on the small of my back, a gesture that felt both protective and investigative. In the limousine afterward, the silence between us was thick enough to choke on. I sat rigid in my gown, hands folded in my lap, while Lucian seemed to be listening to something beyond the hum of the engine. Your voice, he said finally. It's different today. Slower, with a slight rasp. I tensed. It's probably just nerves, and the cathedral was so dry. He nodded once, not in agreement, but acknowledgement. Then, and your perfume. It's changed. My heart stuttered. For weeks, I'd been coached on Melis's signature scent, an expensive French fragrance with notes of gardenia that she sprayed obsessively. In the chaos of the rushed wedding, I'd completely forgotten it. I ran out, I improvised weakly, another measured nod. Noted. When we arrived at the Drake estate, a sprawling modernist structure of glass and stone, the staff greeted us at the entrance. Welcome home, Mrs. Drake, the butler said with a formal nod. Mrs. Drake, not Miss Cavarel, not Tamsin, someone else entirely. That night, after an awkward dinner where I could barely swallow a bite, we retired to separate sides of a massive master bedroom. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, certain he was doing the same. Just as I thought he might have fallen asleep, his voice cut through the darkness. I don't need eyes to recognize a lie. I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. 3 days after the wedding, I entered the kitchen seeking coffee, only to freeze at the sound of a familiar voice from the foyer. Where is he? Melis stood at the base of the grand staircase, looking like she'd stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. Perfect waves in her hair, flawless makeup, blood-red lipstick her signature, designer heels, full face. She didn't look like someone humiliated or abandoned. She looked like someone about to record a victory. I'm here to fix this mess, she announced, her eyes locking with mine like I was a scratch on her mirror. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She breezed past me as if I were invisible and walked directly toward Lucian's study. I followed, coffee sloshing in my trembling hand. Lucian sat in his usual leather chair, head tilted slightly toward the classical music playing softly from hidden speakers. He didn't move when Melis entered. Darling, she purred, placing her hand on his shoulder. I know it's been chaotic, but let's not confuse kindness with chemistry. You and I, we were real. Lucian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Minutes later, our parents arrived, no warning, no call, just the crunch of tires on gravel and then their voices filling the foyer. My mother rushed forward to embrace Melis, not a single question about her disappearance, not even a whisper of why she'd abandoned her own wedding. You're back, she said with tearful joy. We knew you'd come to your senses. Then she turned to me, her smile dropping half a degree. Thank you, Tamsin, for holding things together, like I was nothing but tape and glue. The hastily arranged brunch in the garden felt like a performance on a tilting stage. Melis sat at the head of the table as if it had been planned for weeks. Her phone was propped on a small tripod, recording. Her mimosa sparkled in the sunlight. I checked my own phone under the table and saw it a new video already going viral. A clip from Melis's engagement photo shoot with Lucian, paired with melancholic piano music. The caption read, "Some mistakes can be corrected. Stay tuned. Truth coming." The comments poured in. Glad the real bride is back. About time. The replacement was awkward anyway. My fingers gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I've booked a podcast interview, Melis announced, lifting her glass. Full live stream. We'll clear this all up for the public. My mother clinked her glass against my sister's. It's time the world remembered which daughter built this family's future. No one looked at me. No one said my name. I might as well have been furniture. Later that afternoon, I discovered I'd been uninvited from a charity gala where Lucian was being honored. Oh, we weren't expecting both sisters, the hostess said with a clipboard smile when I arrived. Unfortunately, there's only one seat reserved. She gestured toward a glittering table near the stage. One place card, Mrs. Celeste Drake. I turned and left without a word, the realization crystallizing in my mind I had never existed to them. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as a person. That night, in a small boutique hotel room I'd checked into, I stared at a message from my mother. See, you were never meant to be seen. Something inside me didn't just bend, it broke and reformed into something sharper. If I'm invisible, I whispered to myself, Then no one will see me coming. The following evening, Lucian asked me to join him for a walk through the east wing of the estate. We moved in silence until we reached the music room floor-to-ceiling windows, a grand piano, and in the corner, a cello I hadn't touched in years. "I want you to show me something only you would show me," he said, his voice low and steady. "Not her," I hesitated, then walked to the cello, kneeling. I ran my fingers over the curved wood. It was still in tune. The housekeeper must have maintained it, perhaps thinking Melis might eventually take it up again. She never had. Music required patience, and patience wasn't Melis's style. I positioned the instrument, lifted the bow, and played. The room didn't echo. It absorbed, swallowing every note like it had been waiting. Lucian stood motionless, his head tilted again, not out of confusion, but recognition. When the last string vibrated into silence, he whispered, "She never played for me." The next morning, while everyone was occupied with breakfast, I slipped into the attic. Dust layered everything: boxes, trunks, forgotten frames. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until I saw it: a metal lockbox tucked behind a crate labeled Lucian Audio Archives. Inside were several voice recorders marked by date. One label stopped me cold. "For Celeste or whoever dares pretend to be." My hands trembled as I pressed play. Lucian's voice came through, steady and clear. "If you ever lie to me, make sure it's a lie worth breaking everything for." That was it. No accusations, no anger, just a warning and a test. Lucian had known, or at least suspected, and had left this message waiting for truth, not performance. "We need to be careful." Mary, Lucian's executive assistant, whispered as she slid a file across her desk to me. Her eyes darted to the door, making sure no one was passing by. "They're watching you, especially your sister." I nodded, quickly scanning the document: a preliminary contract between Melis and a luxury fragrance company, using Lucien's name and foundation without authorization. "How did you get this?" I asked. "I've worked for Mr. Drake for 8 years. Mary replied, "I knew something was wrong the moment your sister started handling his correspondence. The language wasn't right. The priorities weren't his." Over the next week, Mary became my ally in piecing together the truth. We discovered that my access to Lucian's private office had been restricted, files had been moved, and several documents were suspiciously missing from the Foundation archives. One afternoon, while searching through a filing cabinet in the guest house office, I heard footsteps approaching. I barely managed to slide the drawer shut and pretend to be looking for a book when Melis appeared in the doorway. "Lost?" she asked, her smile sharp as a paper cut. "Just browsing," I replied, my heart hammering. She stepped closer. "You know, there's a difference between playing dress up and actually belonging somewhere. You're still just the understudy." I met her gaze without flinching. "And you're still just using people for your own gain?" Her smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Careful, little sister. Remember who taught you how to swim by pushing you into the deep end." After she left, I waited 10 minutes before continuing my search. In my haste, I knocked over a stack of folders. As I gathered them, a small black notebook fell open, revealing pages of handwritten notes, instructions on how to mimic Melis's speech patterns, her favorite phrases, even the pitch of her laugh. My stomach turned. They hadn't just forced me to replace Melis at the last minute. They'd been grooming me as her stand-in for months. 3 days later, I found myself in Lucian's private office with Mary, examining the prenuptial agreement I'd been rushed into signing. "Look at this," Mary said, running her finger over a section of the document. "Feel the texture." I traced my fingers over the page and felt tiny raised dots braille. Mr. Drake insisted on having his own clause added, Mary explained. He wouldn't let the lawyers handle it alone. What does it say? Only valid with verbal consent of the bride. Heard by me. Recorded. Mary looked up at me. He built his own safety net. He was never going to be fooled. That evening, we made another discovery. Hidden in an encrypted folder on Melis's abandoned laptop was a series of audio files, recordings of me practicing her voice, followed by her critiques. No, 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 her voice snapped in one recording. My laugh is lighter, more musical. Yours sounds like you're choking. Again, I can't do this anymore, my voice replied, exhausted. Yes, you can, and you will. If he's blind, he can't tell who's in front of him. I could send my dog in a white dress and he'd say, I do. That's the thing about pride. It makes a man deaf, too. Mary and I stared at each other as the recording ended. We have her, she whispered. I was organizing the evidence in my room when the door swung open without a knock. My mother and Melis entered, closing the door firmly behind them. The performance is over, my mother said, crossing the room like she was inspecting the floorboards. Give him back. I didn't answer right away. My eyes went to Melis, who had propped herself against the dresser, arms folded like she owned the oxygen in the room. You're getting too into character, she said smoothly. That's not your life. You were always just the stand-in. He's kind, I finally replied. He deserves more than being handed off like a transaction. My mother stepped forward, her tone hardening. He belongs to this family, not to you. You think a man like Lucian forgives being tricked into marrying the wrong woman? Melis added with a half smile. There's nothing for you here, Tamsin. There never was. I stood straighter, met their eyes without flinching. Then let him be the one to decide what's forgivable. A pause hung in the air, long enough to make both women uncomfortable. You won't get the chance, my mother snapped. I'm fixing this by the end of the week. She turned and walked out, heels clicking like punctuation. Melis followed, but not before glancing over her shoulder with that same practiced smile she wore in every family photo. Enjoy the little fantasy while it lasts. I stayed there for a while, letting the silence rebuild itself. Then I reached under the mattress and pulled out the recorder I'd hidden there. I pressed stop, having captured every word of their threats. Silence wasn't surrender. It was staging. The foundation studio was minimalist white walls, sleek furniture, professional lighting. Lucian sat beside me, composed in his charcoal suit and dark glasses. I wore navy, simple but sharp, my hand steady on the notes we'd prepared. Are you ready? He asked as the technician counted down from 5. No, I admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. The red light blinked on. Lucian opened with a calm that dared the world to interrupt. Some stories begin with love, he said. Ours began with deception, but the real story is what we chose next. I could feel the tremor in my spine, but I held my head up. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strategy. Melis was watching. I knew it. She wouldn't miss a chance to check her own hashtag. Lucian turned slightly, facing me. People ask me if I can tell when someone's lying. I tell them I can't see faces, but I see patterns. Patterns never lie. He paused, then addressed the camera directly. Some contracts bear the wrong name. Others bear the wrong intent. Let me clarify which is which. The screen split. A recording began to play, the one of Melis talking about sending her dog in a wedding dress. Her voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. The live chat exploded. Comments rolled in like hail. Wait, what? Is this for real? Cancel her yesterday. Lucian didn't flinch. He leaned in, voice steady. Tamsin was never the imposter, but someone else wrote her name out of everything. Beside me, I tried not to react, but my phone buzzed in my lap. A message from my father. "This is madness. You're humiliating us." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back one word: good. Melis's counterattack came fast, a video slickly edited, her voice syrupy with sorrow. "I loved my fiancé," she said. Eyes misted with what looked like tears, but what I knew was a technique she'd perfected using eye drops. I was the one betrayed. My sister preyed on a vulnerable man. She manipulated his condition and our family. The sympathy rolled in at first. Hashtags bloomed, justice for Melis, blind trust, family betrayal. But we were ready. That same morning, a courier in a black suit arrived at her new condo. He rang the bell 3 times, calm and polite. When the door opened, he didn't speak, just handed over a thick sealed envelope. Inside, notice of a lawsuit: libel, fraud, coercion supported by recordings, transcripts, financial trails, and most devastatingly, witness affidavits from staff who had been present during Melis's coaching sessions. By midday, her hashtags were drowning under new ones: #CavarelCon, and the truth comes: justice for Tamsin. The Civic Gala was the social event of the season. Crystal chandeliers, black tie, old money mingling with new technology. Lucian was being honored for his foundation's work. And of course, the Cavarels were invited, a formality that couldn't be avoided without creating gossip. Melis arrived draped in glitter and arrogance, greeting donors like she still had leverage. My mother hovered behind her like a well-trained shadow, all pearls and false composure. They looked around, likely expecting me not to show, but I did. No escort, no gown, just a navy sheath dress and a place card that read, "Mrs. Tamsin Drake." I didn't take my seat immediately. I walked slowly, deliberately through the tables, just close enough for every stare, every whispered gasp to land squarely where it belonged. Lucian took the stage just past dessert. The room fell quiet, a low hum of anticipation hanging in the air. "I was blind for years," he began, "but not just in my eyes. Sometimes the truth waits until no one is looking." Behind him, the slideshow flickered images of his foundation's milestones: scholarships, hospital wings, community centers. Then the screen glitched. A new video began. At first, static. Then footage, crisp and legal, taken from the estate's internal surveillance. Melis standing in the dressing room, my mother beside her. Melis's voice, unmistakable, cut through the silence. "He won't know the difference. She's a placeholder. We needed a bride, not a name." A hush swept the room. Then Lucien's voice, quiet but resolute: "It's not defamation if it's the truth." My mother stood abruptly. Melis froze. One of the gala's coordinators leaned in and whispered something into her ear. A moment later, security quietly escorted both women toward the back exit. No screaming, no scene, just the dull weight of reputations collapsing. Outside the gala hall, under the streetlight glow, I stood with my coat draped over my arm, breathing in the cold air. "Congratulations," came my father's voice, dry and bitter. "You destroyed what we spent decades building." I turned to him. For once, I didn't drop my eyes. "No," I said. "I ended what should never have begun." He didn't reply, just walked into the dark, shoulders bent by something heavier than age. Then Lucian was beside me. He didn't speak at first, just reached into his coat pocket and placed something in my palm, a brooch, small and simple, with my initials TR. "It was never about the veil," he said. "It was about who dared wear her own name." The legal fallout was swift and comprehensive. The Cavarel Corporation's stock plummeted. Board members resigned. Investigations into fraudulent contracts began. My father faced charges of corporate fraud. My mother retreated to our lake house, refusing all calls. Melis's social media empire crumbled as sponsors pulled out one by one. Lucian and I sat across from each other in his study a week after the gala, the space between us filled with unspoken words. "I knew it wasn't you," he said finally. "From the first phone call you took for her, I knew." I stared at him. "How? You asked about the books I was reading. She never did. You remember details about conversations we'd had weeks before. She couldn't be bothered." He leaned forward. "You listened, actually listened, but you let it continue," I said, a hint of accusation in my voice. "You married me knowing I wasn't her." "I married you not knowing who you were, but knowing who you weren't," he corrected. "I needed to understand why, and I needed evidence. To protect yourself, to protect us both." He removed his glasses, revealing eyes that weren't completely sightless, just severely limited, seeing shadows and light but little else. I was angry, yes, but also intrigued. "The woman on the phone who discussed literature and music with me for hours, that was you, not her. I wanted to meet that woman." I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "I'm sorry for deceiving you, and I'm sorry for letting you believe I was completely deceived." He reached across the table, finding my hand with unerring precision. "Perhaps we can start again, this time with the truth." 1 year later, the court dates came and went quietly, most behind closed doors. My mother never showed. Melis did, twice, flanked by lawyers, hair immaculate, voice neutral. But she never looked at me, and I never needed her to. Lucian and I left North Carolina in the spring, not because we had to, but because we could. We settled in a lakeside town in Oregon, far from the noise of legacy, scandal, or socialite calendars. Together, we co-founded a center called Touch of Light, a place for blind and low-vision students to learn everything from mobility to self-advocacy to, most importantly, trust. The sign out front was hand-carved, and beneath the name, in smaller, softer script, founded by Tamsin Reeve and Lucian Drake. Not Cavarel, not Mrs. Someone, just me. Lucian taught music in the afternoons, his fingers dancing over piano keys like a second language. I taught literacy, specializing in Braille. Our relationship had evolved slowly, built on honesty rather than performance, on choice rather than coercion. The first time he kissed me, really kissed me, not as part of a ceremony or a show, was on the dock behind our new home. The sun was setting, painting the water in colors he could barely perceive, but that I described to him in detail. "I'm starting to see through your eyes," he said, his hand cupping my cheek. "And I through yours," I replied, understanding what he meant. One rainy Thursday, while organizing supply drawers in the back office of the center, I found a box labeled simply "Old." I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won out. Inside, among brittle receipts and dried ink pens, was the veil, that veil, the one with CC stitched into the corner, mocking me on the day I was made into someone I wasn't. I held it for a long time, contemplating tossing it into the trash. Instead, I sat at the window that night, scissors in hand, carefully trimming along the edge of the embroidery. The threads were stubborn, tightly woven, but they came loose. Then I pulled out a needle, chose thread that matched my favorite deep navy, and stitched my initials into the edge TR. Lucian found me a little while later, sitting on the porch swing, veil in my lap. He didn't ask what I was doing. He just sat beside me and took my hand. "Ay, come on." After a few quiet minutes, he asked, "Are you still haunted by what they took from you?" I watched a duck glide across the lake, its reflection quiet and steady. No, I said. I mourned who I was never allowed to be. And now I'm just becoming. He smiled like someone who understood what it meant to be seen by choice. Not just proximity. Back in Florida, Melis had remarried. Her new husband, a senator with sharp suits and careful PR, lost his eyesight in a car accident the previous month. I didn't read about it in the news. I heard it from a friend of a friend who still ran in the old circles. Apparently, she helps him dress now, buttons his shirts, wipes his glasses out of habit. "You're my light," he once said to her, according to that same friend. And Melis, ever the performer, smiled at him in the mirror. But that smile, the one she wore in the reflection, cracked just slightly because she knew she wasn't the light. She had never been the light. She was the shadow that blocked someone else's. I don't hate her. I don't think I ever really did. Hate is a mirror, too. It shows you what you're still giving space to. What I feel now is distance, clarity, a kind of release. I no longer flinch when someone calls me by my name because it's mine. I earned it. I kept it. I made it new again. There's no statue for me, no award show, no standing ovation. But every time a student runs their fingers over their first Braille word and lights up, that's the only legacy I care to leave. And when I lie in bed at night, Lucian's arm around my waist, his breath warm against my neck, I don't hear voices telling me I'm a placeholder. I hear my own voice, steady, real, mine. Sometimes love doesn't punish, but it doesn't forget either. Sometimes justice looks like leaving. Sometimes it's just a name whispered right for the first time. I didn't need to wear her name anymore. I had one of my own, and this time it stayed. And that's how I found my way back to myself, not as Melis's replacement, not as Mrs. Drake, but as Tamsin Reeve, finally visible in my own right. It's been 3 years since that day at the gala when everything collapsed. The Cavarel name doesn't command the same respect in social circles anymore. My parents sold the mansion last summer. Melis still posts on social media, though her follower count has dwindled. The irony of her caring for a blind husband isn't lost on me. But I don't dwell on it. Some forms of justice right themselves. As for Lucian and me, our Touch of Light Center just celebrated its second anniversary. Last month, one of our students, a 12-year-old girl who lost her sight in an accident, performed her first piano recital. When she finished playing, she smiled directly at me and said, "I found my voice." I couldn't help but think how much those words meant to us both. I still have that wedding veil, now with my initials stitched where my sister's once were, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that even the most carefully woven deceptions can be unpicked, thread by thread, until only truth remains. If you've ever felt invisible or replaceable, know this: no one can wear your name forever. Your story is waiting for you to claim it. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. And I'd love to know what's one moment in your life when you finally stood up and claimed your true identity. Share in the comments below. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most important person to be seen by is yourself.